Hello, Brent.
Morning.
Hi, Hannah.
Morning.
Welcome. Have either of you participated in a mediation before?
No, I haven't.
No, okay. Well, it's nice to have you here today. I'm going to take a few minutes just to let you know how things are going to go this morning and some of the questions we'll be asking as we move along. All right. So we're looking at this as a 6-stage process, Brent and Hannah. And we're just going to take a few minutes right now, Michelle and I, to prepare you for the conversation that's about to proceed. We'll ask you a few questions to settle things like confidentiality and your role and our role. And we'll cover those things to begin with, okay? And once we've done that, we're going to ask you, what are you here to resolve today? That will be the question, to identify an agenda for the next piece of the conversation. And so once we've identified the agenda, and we do have that up on the board, then we're going to be asking you what is important to you about that. And to explore some of your concerns, beliefs, maybe your expectations and hopes about that agenda, okay? And that will be an opportunity for you, Brent, and you too, Hannah, to speak to each other. And during that time, Michelle and I have a role really to listen on behalf of you and listen with you. We may interrupt only slowly, maybe rarely. We might ask some clarifying questions. But really it's your opportunity to have a conversation, and that is going to be the bulk of your conversation here today, to explore those. Once you've done that, and in some way what you're doing is setting down some criteria for your resolution, right? Deciding what might make your resolution work. Then we'll move into a brainstorming stage. And in the brainstorming, you'll have an opportunity to come up with some creative options that will meet your that will resolve the circumstances that have brought you here today. Following that, you will have an opportunity to evaluate those options and decide which of those options are feasible and doable and which meet your criteria, and in fact, which you have the authority to move forward with. And finally, will be the solution or the solving part of this conversation. And at that point, you will have an opportunity to flesh out a plan, a specific plan. And Michelle and I have a role there to capture that in writing for you. Do you have any questions about that process? Okay, thank you.
So I also want to touch on a few things. I mean, Marjorie had said today kind of gives you guys the opportunity to have a conversation in a safe environment where, you know, our goal is to help build some understanding in the issues that you guys have been coming across in the workplace. So really we want to, I guess that's our job as facilitators, is to be able to create a safe environment for you guys to bring forward things maybe that you feel you haven't been able to talk about yet. And really around that, we want to address confidentiality in the conversation today. So really look at what's important for each of you today in regards to confidentiality and who you share this conversation with and who you don't. So I want to go to you guys and just find out, and maybe I'll start with Brent, kind of confidentiality-wise, what's important to you today?
So you're talking about the meeting today, this actual meeting, what needs to be confidential, or
yeah, like are there people you need to share the conversation with today? Is there, you know, is there a possibility to keep it in the room? I mean, that's what we're looking at, is how can we create an environment where you guys feel safe having a conversation, and a piece of that is if I know that no one's sharing this outside the room, then that helps me feel safe. But it may not, so that's why I'm asking you.
My preference is that the conversation itself would be confidential. I don't have to share, I don't think, anything that we talk about here. The results, I think, are going to be known, so at least by something.
Sure, Brent, you'll have an opportunity in the solve stage to review that and rediscuss confidentiality, decide at that point what you'd like to share.
Sure.
How about for you?
Well, Brent has already shared information before in the past, which I thought was confidential. So I am concerned about today and whether or not it will be kept confidential. I don't want anything that's shared in this room to leave this room. That would be my preference, but it hasn't always been that way in the past.
Okay, so what do you need from Brent today to kind of help build that trust back for you? Or
I'm not really sure. I don't have a great answer for that. I think the fact that you both are here adds some validity to that statement, but I don't know. I guess I'll see how the conversation evolves and how safe I'm feeling.
Okay.
It'll be a process.
And then, like Marjorie said, we'll revisit it at the end of our time and just really go back to you guys and say, okay, what is it that you're comfortable sharing?
Okay.
And come to some agreement of what needs to be shared, what you're comfortable sharing, and kind of go back at it that way.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, I know what else I was going to say about confidentiality is I do take notes during our time together. Really, I'm trying to capture what I'm hearing is important to you guys. And often I share that on the board with you or use it when I'm summarizing kind of what I've heard. So just so you know, I'm taking notes, but I'll destroy those kind of at the end. So, and Marjorie and I, again, don't have to share anything forward with anyone in your organization other than what you agree on, towards the end of our time together. So it's not like we're going to HR or to anyone else in the organization.
I'd also like to say, Hannah and Brent, that it's not unusual at this point for people to feel a slow level of trust about what's going to happen or the outcome of this, whether it's regard to confidentiality or other actions. And one of the purposes of the conversations, or one of your opportunities in this conversation, is to establish what I might call some rungs on a trust ladder, where you agree to some actions that you decide on, right? Because we're not going to tell you what to do. You decide on, you move forward here. You'll have that as you begin to rebuild trust in this relationship.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Marjorie said, that our role today is really just to facilitate the conversation. We're not here to steer you anywhere. We're not going to bring forward anything that we've talked about previously when we met with you. So there's no concerns about that. We want to take this somewhere. Right? We're just here to facilitate and to ensure that you guys come to a solution that's going to meet your needs from what we heard in the conversation.
Right. Your VP who hired us here today, all he hears is that we had a meeting.
Okay.
You also have a role in this conversation and an opportunity, and your role and your opportunity is to share information that you choose to share with each other and to engage in the conversation until you reach a mutually agreeable resolution. And as you take on that role, it's really beneficial to talk about what I call some protocols for a conversation that might help make this conversation different than other conversations you may have. I'm going to offer you the opportunity to engage in this conversation without interrupting each other, for one thing, okay, so that you can each have the chance to finish your thoughts and sentences. I'm also going to invite you to share in a gentle way. Now, I'm using that word gentle, and I'm deliberately not using the word respectful, because sometimes out of respect, people withhold information. Respect is a very culturally laden idea. So I'm going to use the word gentle, and I'm going to invite you to share everything you need to share in order to reach a resolution that is sustainable for you. And I'm going to invite you to be honest. Honest not only with the details that you have to share, but also with your own reaction or interaction with each other as you sit here today. This conversation also works best if you're open to new ideas. If you're open to hearing what the other person has to say and allowing it to influence your thinking. So that is your other opportunity today. And finally, I'm going to invite you to be specific, to illustrate what you have to say with very specific examples. And that goes to clarity. It will help with understanding. So do you agree to that gentle, honest, open, specific talk?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the one piece that we haven't discussed is really about this process being voluntary. So I know that, the VP has suggested, and I don't know, I guess, how strongly he suggested you come here. So I'm checking with you guys because it's important for Marjorie and I and for the process that it's voluntary, that you guys are here because you want to be here and you want to work at resolving it. So I guess I just want to check with you guys into where you are on that scale.
Strongly?
Strongly, you're here voluntarily?
Strongly
or
recommended.
kind of strongly. So how's that going to affect your conversation today?
I am trying very hard to do some of the things that you've suggested. So to be open, it's not, this is difficult.
And it is difficult, not just for you, Hannah. I mean, it's difficult for everyone involved, and it always is in every conversation we have. Right?
Yeah, thanks.
How about for you, Brent? And the
Well,
voluntary.
I guess I kind of agree with Hannah. Voluntary is kind of a strong word here. It didn't seem like something that I would not agree to. And frankly, without knowing anything about mediation, I was concerned that it sounded like something therapeutic, and that's not me, that's not my style. But some of what you said, I guess, is more agreeable to me.
Okay. And then I would just suggest that to kind of keep that voluntary piece, that if you guys feel at any time that this isn't meeting your needs, or the conversation, isn't progressing, then let us know, right? We can take a break, we can talk to you in the other room, we can find out what's happening, and we can discontinue the process if you feel that it's not meeting your needs. So.
Okay, it is your process. Finally, I think the last thing, one of the things I just want to mention is that this conversation will work best if you focus on things that you have the authority to resolve. So do you have the full authority to resolve the circumstances that are between you?
I believe so.
Hannah?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that I think kind of wraps up this little introductory piece, so we can get to the conversation for you guys.
Yes, we have about an hour. Do you have an hour?
And before actually I go there, I just want to find out if you guys have any questions about today or.
No. I mean, you've talked a lot about what you're going to do here, and I'm prepared to see how that plays out.
Okay. So let's then start with our piece of, what is it that you're wanting to resolve today, and I'll give you both a chance to speak, so maybe I'll start with Hannah this time.
Well,
I'm really sorry, Hannah, I don't want to interrupt before you get going, but I just really want, like in a sentence or two, just so we can kind of build a little agenda to help focus us today in our conversation. So maybe some points of what's important for you to talk about.
well, communication is a big concern for me. Not only just between Brent and I, but Brent communicating to other colleagues about me. And that is really difficult. So that's that's an issue for me that I would like to resolve. And also I guess it'll come up that it's just about my performance. It's obviously an issue because I didn't get my bonus. So that was difficult this year. And so that's 2 sentences. I've already given you probably like 3, but those are big things for me.
Thank you, Hannah. Yeah. So communication, performance, are those issues that you're open to talking about too, Brent?
I guess my central issue is performance.
And
I'm here because the performance of one of my staff has not been satisfactory.
Guess I'm that staff, obviously.
okay. Well, and yeah, that's gives us an opportunity to look at that and maybe look at it in the aspect of what's important to you about the performance and the same with you. So let's capture that.
Okay.
And we can add pieces to the agenda too.
Okay, so thank you. So you've identified communication and performance that you'd like to focus the conversation on. And as I mentioned to you earlier, you now have an opportunity to explore what is important to you about communication or performance. And at this point, I'd like to remind you to speak in a gentle, honest, open, specific way, and to think about what your concerns are or assumptions are about these things. Where would you like to start? You've got two things on the agenda there, performance and communication. Where would you like to start?
Well, obviously I don't want to talk about performance, so communication would be great for me to start. That would be my preference, but.
And I, you know, I don't want you to look at that in a negative way either, Hannah. I know that it's coming that across that you're not meeting a performance goal, but I want to hear more about what your job in the workplace and, you know, how doing a good job is important to you, or whatever it is under that piece, right? So I guess I don't want it to have this negative connotation, and maybe that's not the right word that we should be using, but
okay. It's difficult to
yeah,
reframe it,
so
but
maybe,
I will try.
Maybe there's another word that we can put to that, but sorry.
Maybe talking about your responsibilities in the workplace,
Sure.
your role.
Sure.
Your role, perhaps.
Sure.
Would be a good way to think of this. If we focus the conversation on your role. Okay.
Yeah, that feels a lot better, actually.
Okay, I'm gonna change that on the board too,
Okay.
just because I was getting this feeling that
Yeah,
it was coming across
exactly.
as a negative thing, and I didn't want.
So going back then to where to start, you have communication and role on the board. Where would you like to start?
Well, if you're asking me, I mean, communication is Hannah's item, not mine. I don't have anything to say particularly on that topic.
Okay, well, maybe I will start with you, Brent, and ask you about communication in the workplace and what is important to you about how communication happens and what that looks like.
Well, my preference is always that communication be very direct. I believe that in a work unit, the more people communicate with each other, the more productive and creative everyone can be.
And how about for you, Hannah?
This is your opportunity to share with Brent.
About
Your concerns about communication.
Well, like in the last few months, there's been a huge change in how you communicate to me, and it's gone from, not, sort of giving me the opportunity to do what I want, because there was obviously a level of trust, and I just feel like that's not there anymore because you have been micromanaging me for the last little while, and I found it unbelievably stressful because it's such a shift from how we operated before. And so that's a change in your communication that I've really noticed, and it's really impacted me at work. And the other thing too is that I heard through other people that you were talking to the VP about my performance before talking to me. And obviously that has something to do with me not getting my bonus this year. And that's really hard when your colleagues all around you are sharing what they got for their bonus and it's related to performance, and I've always been a good performer, and then
This has been a very tough situation for you. It seems like it's been difficult for both of you.
Well, it's been challenging, that's for sure. Well, Hannah, there's no question. I agree with you that I guess the tone of communication has changed, or certainly the content of my communication has changed, but that has come as a result of the change in your work performance. You're right to speak about the trust that we had, and I was content to let you to do what you do because you were doing a great job, and that's where the trust came from, because I saw that you didn't need to be managed or micromanaged, as you say. I mean, would you disagree that has changed? That what you do and how you're doing has changed in the last?
But you haven't told me what's changed. You just changed the way in which you address me. You haven't told me that there's been change.
Well, we discussed it in your performance review in December.
Yeah, but you just it was just
So when did things change? Like what happened? Was there an incident or what?
Well, my mom died.
So you've had a really terrible awful year.
Yes.
You've mentioned micromanaging, Hannah. I wonder if you can help Brent understand what that is for you.
Well,
Specifically.
I mean, I help to manage certain projects that are going out and going on. And so I'm coordinating, you know, minimum 7 people or 10, and then maximum 10 usually. And so I've really in the past had the opportunity to manage those things and manage my own schedule. And, you know, that's always been something that I've had the flexibility and freedom to do. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten your question. What was your question?
I was just asking you to let Brent know what that micromanaging is for you specifically.
So it's now asking to be CC'd on emails that I'm sending out to my team. It's now sitting in on team meetings that he was never doing before. I mean, I understand those are all things that a manager can do and ask and be involved in. It's just such a change from how it was in the past. And it's hard for me, for someone who's so independent in how I work, to have that happen. And yes, I know we talked about my performance but I just feel like there's been no asking, like, why, you know, and why has it changed? It's been like, your performance is this, and you're being reprimanded.
This is honestly the first that I'm hearing that you're not happy that I asked you to make these changes in reporting. And as you pointed out, it's completely within my purview to do so. Now, I know your mother died, and I expressed my condolences at the time, and I mean, we have the support in this organization. You took some time. I'm not a human resources person, but as far as I understand, you had the opportunity to take a bereavement leave, which you did at, you know, for a length of time that worked for you, and we worked around that.
1 week for my mother. Like, I'm sorry, but I consider you a support as well in the workplace, not just HR.
So what support were you looking for from Brent at that time?
Maybe asking when I came back to work. I think you maybe asked once, but like, I don't know if you've ever lost a mother or a father.
So you've been talking about a change. You've had a really difficult year. Yes. And clearly, your work here is really important to you.
Very, I love my work.
And you value the independence and the flexibility that you had.
Yes.
And you valued your relationship with Brent and the trust that you had with
Yes.
Brent and the trust he showed in you to demonstrate that independence and flexibility.
Absolutely.
And there's been a shift, and I think what's really galling for you, from what I'm hearing, is that shift came without any explanation behind it. So it's,
At
now
least to
you
me.
feel like you're under oversight, and you're wondering, why am I under this oversight? What's happening here that this change happened?
And I know Brent's saying that my performance changed, but there's been, I don't know, I just feel like there's something missing in like performance change. There's no understanding of why that could have changed, and I guess, and no one asked, you know? No one asked. And so I guess that's just like something that's missing for me. And maybe Brent knows more, and maybe this conversation will elaborate that and can tell me a little bit more. Anyways.
So you're looking for clarity, and the support of your manager is really important. So
Yes.
those two things, if you get those from this conversation.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So Brent, maybe, and our goal is to build understanding today, so how you could help Hannah understand about the performance piece, why that is so important to you, or what's behind that?
Okay, I will speak to that. I do want to say something about what seems to be upsetting Hannah the most, which is the circumstances around the death of your mother. And no, I didn't bring it up when you returned. And that's because I'm not a therapist, and I'm a manager, and also I respect people's privacy, or I try to. And to me, to ask you about it is just to bring it up again. So really, that's why I didn't do that. I just, you know what, I didn't want to bring it up in your mind again and kind of make it fresh for you again. So part of what was going on there. Well, I can't speak to the performance, and I want to say, you've been a great addition to the team for the almost the full 5 years that you've been here. But in the last year, and I don't think I noticed a correlation with your loss, but your performance has dropped off, and frankly, the key piece has been your inability to get projects done on time. Now, of the 4 or 5 projects that you've had, one was done on time, and the others were late, and that's something new for you. And that was a pattern happening over the whole of the year, over all of.
It sounds like you've been very surprised about the sprint.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're looking at an employee who's been performing very well. As we pointed out, in such a way that I didn't have to manage her, I didn't have to micromanage her because she was doing great. And everybody spoke well of her and so on. So I was very happy with the work.
So how has that change impacted you within your role?
Well, obviously in our group, we're under pressure from above, and my people don't always see that, but certainly I get it from the VP, and those are not very pleasant conversations.
So there's this stress coming from above that the team isn't meeting their goals, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very obvious to upstairs, and they make it pretty plain to me.
In what way? What does that look like for you?
Well, it looks like demands to improve and to do what needs to be done to make things happen.
So
they're not holding my hand.
Yeah. So they have trust in you and your performance and your ability to hold your team up to that capability and that performance.
Well,
and so it reflects on you.
Do, and I hope to maintain that trust.
Right. And so it reflects on you with all of the teams, when the team is on time and when they're not on time, it has a real impact for you. Because you're the one carrying the responsibility for that, and it comes down on you.
That's right, because I go into those meetings alone. I don't have my team with me at that time.
Right.
And I know it's unpleasant to receive a change in your bonus. This company is typically pretty generous with bonuses. Mine was cut by 50%.
So you've both had an impact.
Yeah, I got nothing.
And what did that say for you, Hannah?
That as soon as anything changes and you're not up to par, then you're cut, basically.
Those changes are made by the compensation committee. They're not made by me.
But they have to be somewhat, like, how do they make those decisions? Like, obviously in every year past, I've always received a very, a good bonus. And this year, the first year that I had a negative performance review, there was a correlation with my bonus. So for me, I'm sorry, I'm going to make that leap that those two things are connected. There obviously has to be a connection with how the compensation people, or whatever you just called it, make the decisions.
Well, there obviously is a connection, and the
Yes.
connection works for me as well as it does for you.
Well, at least you got 50%.
Does that tie back into the support piece for you, Hannah? That you feel that's again another turn of not providing support in this financial piece of the bonus, or?
It's something, like, I think if you've had something for 5 years and then it's taken away from you with really no explanation as to why, it is very difficult to take that. And so for me, with everything that's gone on this year, that on top of it, like, and then how it's demotivating. So it's not as if that's going to motivate my performance more. Like, I don't, the compensation board, maybe you need to let them know that, like, if you take away someone's compensation, that's going to demotivate. Like, I don't, you talk about this change in performance, and yes, you addressed it, and yes, we talked about it, and obviously, I'm having issues remembering that conversation. But what hurts me the most from if we're going to use the word support, is that as soon as my performance slightly shifted to somewhat what's classified as more negative or not as strong as it was before, it was addressed in a performance review meeting. You didn't ask me why, but you knew my mom had died, okay? That is very difficult. I'm not saying that's the only reason, or I'm not trying to use that as an excuse for my change in performance. I'm just saying that instead of asking me what's going on, you just came down and we had a performance review meeting, and then I didn't get a bonus. And there's been no conversation since then, and now this.
I'm having trouble seeing the connection between the support, which you're talking about, suddenly seems to be so important to you, and what you said earlier, which that you value, was your independence and your ability to make your own decisions and not be micromanaged. So that's a disconnect.
I think you can still be independent and want support.
What does support look like for you? What is support?
Well, in this scenario, what happened, like, as soon as I became not the great employee, like, it was like all trust was gone. And it was as if, and then it was, you know, I missed one project, I know we talked about it, and then I had the second one, and then all of a sudden your behavior shifted to a much more intense, as I call it, you could say manage, but I say micromanage because it was really different than before. And then instead of sort of saying, let's talk about this, you know, what else is, like, this is a real difference for you, it was performance, 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 performance. Okay? So you can still support someone by asking them what's going on and still give them the you know, I don't think you can, they're not mutually exclusive. You can be supportive and allow someone to still be independent.
So the
Okay,
why
Hannah,
is missing for
excuse
you.
me.
The why, that question about why. Why
Yes.
is this going on? What is happening?
Yeah, and why wasn't that asked to me?
Go ahead.
Hannah, last week at the strategic review meeting, you stormed out. Big huff of emotion. And there's your answer for why I don't want to go into the kind of support that you're asking for. I can't have that kind of emotion at work. I can't, I'm not equipped to deal with that. I'm not trained to deal with that.
Well, then get training.
So
Plenty busy.
I heard you talk a lot, Brent, about, you know, and I heard you talk at the beginning about you were worried that this is some sort of counseling thing, and heard you talk about emotion in the workplace and that. It sounds like for you that being professional, maybe, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but being professional in the workplace doesn't really involve that piece, like the emotion should be.
I'm a manager, and I'm not paid or trained to handle emotions. That's not what I manage.
But you manage people, and people have emotions. I have emotions, obviously.
I manage competent adults who I expect to manage their own emotions. I don't see the workplace as a forum for therapy.
I'm not asking for therapy.
So why, when there is emotion in the workplace for you, Brent, what impact does that have on
The
you?
impact is it gets out of hand. It leads to things like people blowing up meetings in tears.
Which has what impact for you?
Well, it
as
shuts
a
everything
manager?
down, and then now everybody's, okay, oh, well, what's wrong with Hannah, or what's wrong with whoever, and we're not focused on what we're meant to be doing.
So it kind of takes away from what you feel is supposed to be happening at work, and the
No, what I
focus
feel
of-
is supposed to be happening, what's supposed to be happening at work, which is work.
Okay.
I mean, we're all adults and we're paid to produce, and we're paid very well. I mean, the bonus, obviously, is an issue. It's an issue for me as well. The bonus is technically gravy. It's not guaranteed, but we're well paid in you know, according to industry standards, we're well paid in our organization, and we're paid to produce. It's not.
So Brent, you're really talking about, I guess, a sense of control that is important in performance.
No, I don't see it as an issue of control.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess in a sense, I'm talking about people controlling themselves.
I'm just
But
wondering
it's-
what's going on.
but it's-
And then I'm not competent because I have emotions, is what you're also saying.
No, but I have emotions as well.
But your concern is that that will interfere with productivity and efficiency in the
I've seen it
workplace.
happen.
And then that affects you because your team is not as productive.
Right.
And that has
Right, and
repercussions for you.
It has professional repercussions for me. And frankly, I guess you could say they're personal as well, because I'm just not comfortable when stuff like this happens.
And you have responsibility for the team as well.
Yes, I do.
But what are you hearing, or what's going on for you when you're hearing this?
I'm sorry, I keep, it's a lot to keep, sorry, I keep
Just
getting.
take your time, Hannah. There's
I didn't need to put you on the
there's no
spot.
rush, and just take a breath.
I guess what I am hearing, and you know, maybe my definition of a manager is different than Brent's. And I understand that he has responsibilities, he has to manage a team, he has to answer to above, you know, but if you're managing people, people come in with, you know, it's difficult to leave home at work, and it's difficult to leave work when you're at home. And it's difficult to always, you know, come in and operate like a robot when you're at work. And I think that's what I'm hearing is what you want from me, is 5 years of robotic behavior with no emotion. And then when I have a significant change in my life, and I am displaying more emotion, and I am walking out of a meeting, which I was completely embarrassed about, but I didn't want to cry in front of the entire team. Forgive me, and I realized that it was inappropriate. Like, believe me, I know that that wasn't the best answer for that situation, but I did not want to display that in front of the team. It makes me feel very vulnerable, and you've created a team where displaying emotion is considered weak and not competent. And that has come through in the 5 years that I've been with you. That's why you've never seen that side of me. And then, unfortunately, I've had a circumstance which I don't know how to manage happen to me. And it's impacted me more than I was expecting. And I think that if you're a manager, my definition is that yes, it's to help your team be effective, but part of that is to support your team in some way. And if that's asking them how they're doing after their mom dies, that's a pretty simple ask, you know? That's what maybe my definition is a manager. I'm not asking for therapy. I find that insulting, actually, that you even said that. It makes me not want to have this conversation, I've got to say. And, you know, I'm not asking for that. All I'm asking is for a manager to ask me how I'm doing and check in. And that is part of creating a team and a culture that is supportive of one another, that can then be efficient and engaged and productive. And I'm sorry that I'm just throwing such a wrench in it. I just feel like, you know, 5 years of behavior, good behavior has gone out the window when I become a pain in the ass.
You know, I dispute that term robotic, because I think that's bullshit. Like, that is not the culture that I
And Greg,
create.
we want to be able to bring things forward that's going to land in a way that Hannah can hear it.
I wanted to,
And not become defensive.
Yeah, you both referred to, it sounds like you both referred to the same incident last week, where there was a strategic planning meeting.
Yes.
I heard you say, you're embarrassed.
Completely embarrassed. Oh my gosh, like, no one wants to be in a situation where they're going to cry publicly. Like, we're pretty uncomfortable with emotions as it is, even with our friends and family. Like, imagine crying in front of your colleagues.
Thank you. Nobody wants that.
And I think I heard Brent say that that's difficult for you, Brent, to be able to, I guess, manage in the workplace. And you have no training as a manager
No.
to deal with that. Like you were saying, I'm not a therapist. You know, I don't really have the skills to be able to know
And
what I need to do.
I don't
with
want to
these
go there. I'm
emotions.
not comfortable going there. And I think, okay, here's the thing. I think that other people aren't comfortable going there either. When in my life, when I know people have been through something very nasty, it's not my practice to bring it fresh to their mind. I just don't see, for me that doesn't work. I don't want to be reminded, you know, that my father died.
It's not as if I'm not thinking about it, though. That's the thing, like, it's always there.
What have you heard Hannah say about what might work for her?
She wants to be asked, how are you doing? She wants the arm around the shoulder.
No, I didn't say arm around shoulder.
I want to take this word therapy, because I've heard you both use this word. I've heard you say, Mark, about therapy, that you're not trained for therapy that's not appropriate in the workplace. And some concern about this process and whether it might be a bit of therapy. And I heard you say, Hannah, that that therapy, that you're even insulted by the idea that he might be he might think you're expecting
Yes.
therapy in the workplace. And I just want to explore that word a little bit more. So for you, you're not expecting therapy, but you're looking for support in terms of asking how you're doing. How do you just see the difference between those two things to help Mark understand that?
Support is asking how you're doing.
Right.
You know, I've noticed a change in what's going on. You know, things have changed at work, and you know what's going on. You know, instead of coming down on me, and the first thing you do is reprimand me, which is just, I don't know, it's really disheartening.
You know, I'm not stupid. I understand what you're saying, what you're asking for. My concern is that when I ask you, if I were to ask you, that I'm going to get a river of tears, which, you know, is certainly understandable.
Yeah, you
because
might.
you lost a parent. But I don't want to provoke that. That's why I don't do that.
You don't want to deal with it.
No, I don't. I mean, if I had I guess a confidence that you know you'd have a more subdued response, then you know I might have gone there. But I'm afraid that that's gonna, when I say, well, you know, how is it been since
That really hurts me after 5 years
And
of working
so
together.
I'm hearing that, really I'm hearing kind of different, almost personality pieces where Brent is saying, you know, I know there's emotions in the workplace, but I don't necessarily think that we need to display them in an overly overt manner so that they disrupt kind of their productivity and efficiency piece. And,
Sure.
and
I
I'm
think
not,
most people
and
would.
I'm not thinking that you guys need to agree on this. I just want to make it clear that there's this difference for you. And for you, Hannah, you're kind of looking for the ability to get support when you need support emotionally in the workplace, and from your manager, and most likely from your team members and others. So there's this kind of inherent difference in how you manage emotions in the workplace. And I just want to point that out to say, we don't need agreement necessarily on that, or convince somebody else that this is the way you should do it, or no, this is the way you should do it, but some acknowledgement, I guess some insight into the fact that, gee, that's different for both of us. And knowing that, so when we get to that solution piece, we can say, okay, what's going to work for a solution for us in the workplace when Hannah needs this piece around emotions and Brent needs this piece. So just keep that in mind.
It's interesting because, as Michelle pointed out, the differences. I would also like to point out, I don't know if it's a similarity, but for you, Hannah, you expressed extreme embarrassment about crying in public. That you've been a strong performer, you have been an independent professional. You've experienced a change in your life, and to have to run out of a meeting must be horrific, quite honestly, from a professional point of view. Yes. And also, Mark, similarly in a way, I've heard from you that if an employee came and you asked them, how are you doing after your mother dies, and you have to experience that emotion that she's embarrassed about, and you have to deal with that's way outside of your comfort zone and your training as a manager. So I'm also seeing a bit of common ground there from that point of view, that you have this emotion that you have to deal with, and you have an employee that's dealing with an emotional state that you're not sure how to deal with, and what your role is with that, and even if you do have a role, and
It
maybe
looks
isn't
like
appropriate.
a minefield to me.
Yeah.
What do I do that's gonna you know, make my employee, you know, feel that I care, and what am I gonna do that's gonna cause a torrent of tears? I don't know where to step.
Right, and so when there's fear in a minefield, we don't walk, because he wants to, right? So then that looks like for you that he doesn't care. When in fact what I'm hearing is, I don't know how to deal with it. I don't hear I don't care. I don't hear that at all. I hear I don't know how to deal with this. It's a minefield.
Oh, well, of course I care.
Right?
do is just recap a bit about, because I've been, as I said earlier, kind of taking notes about what I heard is important to each of you. So for Brent, it's really about, we talked about communication, how you want that to be direct. The trust piece was important to you, right? And that privacy piece was important to ensure that your employees have the privacy. And that you also have this layer of expectations and stress coming from above that's pushing down on you regarding performance too. And again, all this piece about emotion and what that means for you and the productivity and efficiency in the workplace and how those two seem to kind of rub for you, that there's this rub. So when you think about emotions and hear emotions, you're concerned on the other side about how's that going to affect what's going on in here at work and our productivity and our efficiency.
Absolutely. And I've had emotions in our conversation today, but I'm not expressing them all because I don't think it's going to be productive.
And for you, Hannah, it's about this break in trust, where you really felt that there was that good connection there, and it seemed broken because you were looking for the support and you weren't this amazing, as you said, kind of robot at work, but that your track record of performance had slipped and you were looking for support. And that, again, created stress for you in the workplace and probably, I'm guessing, led to some of this more emotion where you walked out of a meeting and all of that piece, right? And that you really have a lot of pride in your work. You want to be independent in how you work, and this concern about being overly managed and not being flexible enough in what you do is a concern too.
I just think if you're a manager, and I've been a manager in roles before, part of it's not only helping people when they're strong and doing really well, it's helping people when they're not, if you see value in them. And I think that you see value in me. You know, you've made a comment today, which you haven't actually said in the last, 3 to 6 months, that you're great, you were, or I don't know what the wording was, but it resonated. I can't remember everything. And you said something that resonated with me that was somewhat positive. And I feel like I only got your support, or like you were supportive. I mean, you were supportive of me, and because I was performing well, you were supporting my independence, and that is showing support, right? That is a form of support. And then I just think that, as part of a manager, it's when they're strong, but when they're not strong, especially if you see value in them and you want them to stick around. And I'm not feeling that anymore. I'm not, I was, and you sort of said something today that's given me hope, but, I don't know, I'm just going through a lot. I've just been going through a lot of other things too, that I would probably shed light on stuff, but I don't feel safe with you anymore, Brent, to share that stuff. And you obviously don't want to hear it because you would think you were being a therapist or something. Anyways, I'm sorry, I don't mean to take this off track with more negative. It's just,
What are you hearing Hannah say?
What this is without any disrespect to Hannah, because I appreciate the passion statement you just made, but what I was really hearing when you were talking was my own voice telling me that I violated my own guidelines, my own views about communication, and that when I changed the way I was dealing with you, I did it under pressure from above. Not that I was told to do it that way, but I did it in a kind of a stress reaction, and rather than what I hope for myself, which is to do things in the best, most skillful way. And I should have communicated to you much more clearly what my thoughts were and what my expectations were and what I was hoping to do by the changes in what I asked you to do in terms of reporting. So I'm afraid that's what I heard was my own voice while we were speaking. I mean, because I hear the consequences of, to some extent, of what I've done, and that's not my goal as a manager to break people down or to put them on an edge or something. That's definitely not my goal.
What is your goal, or Brent, as a manager?
Well, I don't have a single goal. Obviously, we have company goals. We've got
Right, but I guess in the work with your team, what you were referring to, you're kind of saying that's obviously not my goal.
I want everybody to be cooking. I want us to be rocking out in terms of how we're performing, in terms of the camaraderie of the group. I like everybody to be firing on all cylinders, because I think that's rewarding. I mean, it's rewarding objectively in professional terms, because then we're meeting our goals or exceeding them, which is ideal. And people enjoy what they're doing. That's my goal. That's how I like to work, and that's how I like my team to work.
And you referenced something earlier about, you said that's not how I wanted to deal with the situation. I didn't quite get all of.
No.
When you were talking about, I was
when
thinking in my
Hannah
head.
was talking, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, okay, I have a piece of this. What have I done wrong? And I realized that I haven't followed my own expectations of myself in how I communicate. I value open communication, and I didn't live up to that in this situation. That's something that I understand, and something that I can rectify. It's a lot easier for me than the emotional piece, frankly.
This is some other common ground that you share, both of you. This reaction. You're reacting to stress and pressure to perform from the VP from those events. And you're reacting to completely uncontrollable circumstances in your life. And as you react to those stresses and pressures, it's been driving you further apart in a relationship that you both value. And I can hear from you both how much respect you have for each other in those 5 years of working together. And now you're sharing how some external pressures have really interfered with that respectful relationship in a way that's could almost be quite destructive.
I'm sorry? Could be what?
Could be quite destructive, right, in a relationship, to tear down the walls of a relationship. And so when we're looking at pulling back towards that relationship, when we look at that time that you had for 4 or 5 years, before these external pressures that you're both experiencing, I'm wondering what the good conversations looked like for you then, and what would it take to get back to those conversations?
Well, Brent actually used to ask me how I was in those 5 years. Like, it really is as simple as
Because
that.
I knew what the answer was going to be. Honestly.
And some of that unknown is part of what's
So mine feels
been holding you back. Yeah.
I guess. I think I sometimes am the kind of person who likes to ask a question that I already know the answer to.
because it's safer.
Yeah, well, because I know, I mean, I'm talking about work, and I'm talking about how I expect things to go. And in general, in our division, they've been going very well. And so I kind of have a good expectation when I ask the question what the answer's going to be, because I already sort of know. It's just kind of a confirmation of what we're doing. You know?
So to go to Hannah and say, how's it going, and not be sure of the answer is a minefield.
That's a minefield. It has been a minefield. And I want to be honest. I'm not sure that it's not still a minefield. It kind of still is for me. I'm sorry. I mean, and I see how upset you are, and I'm sorry for that. And I'm afraid of provoking that at any future time. I really am.
I don't
I don't know
really
how
know how
to
to
ask
respond.
how you're doing. without
So
finding out that, oh
can I
shit,
ask-
you're really not doing very well at all.
Because then you're saying, Brent, that you don't know what to do if that comes back to you.
No, I don't.
Regardless of whether you ask it or not, I'm not doing well. And if you do ask, we can probably have a conversation about like what can we do? Like we talked about cooking, right? Like I want my team to be cooking. Well, I'm short a few ingredients to use your analogy, right? Like, and I need you to help me
I
get them.
disagree. I think you've got most of the ingredients.
No, but I appreciate that, but I need you to, like, we can have a conversation. Okay, I may cry. I can't, I've almost cried 3 times in this mediation. I can't tell you whether or not I'm gonna cry or not. I'm sorry, I can't predict it. But, and, you know, but I think that I'm not doing well regardless of whether you ask me or not. And I'm still, like if we don't have that kind of a conversation about like what do you need? What extra ingredients can I bring? How can I help you source them? You know, I'm gonna continue, I don't know if I'm gonna continue to, I think I'm just gonna continue to not, I'm trying to get organized, you know, I'm trying to clear my thoughts, I'm trying to talk to my doctor, he's telling me something this, I don't know if that's my issue, I just think that I'm stressed at work and I can't remember everything, like I can't, I'm even having things just in this conversation, but I just feel that as if I'm not doing well regardless of whether or not you ask me.
I hear that,
And-
Hannah. I hear that. Let me ask you something though. Is it possible though that if I go down that road that I'm crossing a line?
No.
I mean,
I'm
is
not
there-
gonna share anything with you that I don't wanna share, and you're not crossing the line, you're just asking me, how are you? That's
Right,
all.
but I'm hearing more than that now, and the kind of conversation that it seemed to me you were just talking about looks to me like maybe crossing the line.
What line?
Professional
Like what's the,
distance.
what line?
Well, I don't know, as your manager, is it appropriate for me to know so much about what's going on for you emotionally? I'm not sure that that's the case. I mean, I hear that that's kind of, it seems like that's what you're asking for, but I'm not sure that that's
Well,
appropriate.
the only reason I'm saying something is because I thought it might provide or shed some light on like what's going on at work. Because like obviously what's going on at home when you don't see me is impacting me at work. The only reason I'm sharing it is to try and give some explanation as to what's been going on, even though I don't really need to explain to you. The only person that needs to know is our benefits provider. And they do, and they've been great. So that's
Let
my
me be
thing.
direct. Let me be direct with you. So, going forward, if I ask you, and I don't want to be stupid here, but if I just ask you on a daily basis, how are you doing? Is that
That's helpful.
okay? That's what you're looking.
That's helpful. That's a I don't know, that's just for me, that's a great start, because that's been gone for 3 months, since things have changed, you know, with your managing.
It has been, I agree. And do you understand why it has been gone from my side?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying about the communication thing. It's just, you know, to have a manager go from, I'm supporting you to be independent, to I'm micromanaging you and I'm not asking you, you know, how you are anymore, and now I hear that it's because you're afraid of the minefield. I'm sorry I've created a minefield. I'm trying my best. I'm really trying my best.
And I don't think it's necessarily the fact, and I haven't heard Brent say that you're creating this minefield.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing Brent say that he sees this minefield
experiences
and
it.
he doesn't know
Yeah.
how, or have the skills in how to deal with that.
She's
And-
not laying the mines in the sand, that's for sure. That's not how I see it.
Yeah, I think to go back to that, the how are you would be a nice start. It would be a nice return to something that we had in the past.
But I'm hearing, Brent, that there's maybe some fear there of what you're gonna get back if you do ask that question. And then, you know, how are you
I
gonna
think
handle that?
there's
and
less
deal
fear
with
than there was at the beginning of this conversation.
Okay.
Quite a bit less.
Because was
So
there an
I-
expectation that you fix it? Like, so if Hannah,
Fix what?
whatever Hannah would bring forward, if you said, what's wrong, or how are you doing, I'm not doing well, it's this, what, was there an expectation, or what did you think the expectation was when
I'm
you
just
all
trying
sat?
to think what I guess not an expectation that I fix it, but there's now something to be fixed, which I'm not qualified to fix. And it's happening right here in the lobby, or it's happening here in, in front of the receptionist desk. So that's where I was with that. Like, what am I gonna do with this outpouring of emotion just because I asked, or I said, welcome back, and I'm so sorry about Mom. Like, I don't know, what am I gonna do with that? So I don't wanna go there. But what I'm hearing now is that I can do that, and that's what you want, and you're not gonna give me,
I might cry.
I don't
But
think
I
I
can't-
hear a promise about the
That's-
response.
I can't promise
Wasn't
that.
what, okay.
But that's what you were thinking.
But I
is-
also-
Well, I was kind of hoping that that's where we were
I
going.
also hear though, Hannah say she might cry, but she doesn't have an expectation from you that you're gonna solve that for her or fix that for her, right?
No.
What is your expectation, Hannah?
I just, like, for understanding. Like, I think all the conversation does is just bring clarity. Like, I felt some clarity today. Like, I genuinely appreciate the apology around the communication side of things. Because that was really hard for me to wrap my head around, And it was adding to my stress. It was adding to my change in performance. Because I didn't know why you were, you're with me on emails, you're with me on meetings. Like, I didn't know why. And my expectation is not, I've been in many situations where I have cried in front of my supervisor, and some have been really great, some have given me owl eyes and thrown a Kleenex box at me. All I'm asking is that if it happens, but I don't want to rush out of the meeting. I don't want to rush out of the office. I do want to escape the situation. I am uncomfortable as you are, but I can't help it.
And you know that if you do escape it,
We're not going to resolve it.
You're not gonna resolve it, and your commitment to this job,
Yeah, I
your
love my
commitment to your
job.
responsibilities is really important to you, and you need that.
Yeah, I love my job. And
So,
Sorry, Marjorie, I know you're probably gonna say the same thing as me, but we're looking at a piece of the solution here, I think, and I just wanna point that out, that you're bringing forward something where you're saying, okay, just ask me how I'm doing, is what Hannah's looking for. Brent saying, I can do that, and I'm a little worried is what I'm gonna get back, and I heard Hannah say, well, I don't need you to fix it, I just need you to
Hear it.
listen, I think, is.
yeah.
and to be there for you and to have some understanding about what's going on.
Yeah, because it might help you understand why, you've talked about my performance, and why that's changed. And the only way I can tell you about it or explain it is through having a conversation that might be uncomfortable for both of us. Because obviously it's an issue. Like, if I didn't get a bonus, there's an issue, and I'm not sure how to fix it yet because there's a whole bunch of other stuff it's been going on for me, and I might need to go to some appointments. I don't even know if my doctor's telling me all this stuff. But it just helps, it would just be understanding. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just asking you to hear because I think it would probably be helpful.
And I also heard, Brent, like in that solution piece, that there's some concern that this is gonna happen in the hallway, or like, is there?
Well,
some-
right, and in your honesty, you said that could happen, and so there's something still a little bit missing here for me, and that is that you said that you're embarrassed, if you have to cry at work, and you don't, if you're embarrassed, nobody wants to be embarrassed, so you don't want to be there, and yet you're telling me that you're encouraging me to ask the question that could provoke the tears that are going to be embarrassing for you.
I appreciate what you're saying. I think that it would be, for me, it'd be a way of reestablishing some normalcy to our relationship and of how you were showing support to me before. And yes, yes, showing emotion isn't a comfortable thing within the workplace. I mean, it's not really comfortable anywhere unless you're on your own. But I'm okay with that happening because I feel disconnected from what we had before, and I think it might, I don't know, help to reestablish some sort of connection, because that's been missing for me. And yes, I won't see it as you purposely trying to embarrass me. I'm not gonna put that one on the situation.
I
That's
don't want to be
mine.
flippant, Ann, but what if you were to come into my office every morning, you know, sort of first thing?
Even if it was once a
Maybe-
week, that would be okay.
or maybe just tap the door shut, and I could say, how are you doing?
That's-
And then you could have a little cry.
Well, I might not cry.
Or not, or not.
I might cry. It's not I can't predict it.
I'm joking.
I know.
Yes.
So that's why I guess I wanted to establish too in that solution piece about where is the best and the safest place
Yeah, I'm
for
not
those
gonna do it in the hallway.
conversations to happen.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, Brent, you're saying, just
In your
come
office.
into my office once a week, we'll
Yeah.
check in,
Well, I
close the door.
kind of feel like maybe, you know, because there's been this sort of gap between us, if we go a little while and do whatever we're gonna do with, you know, my checking in with you, it'll kind of normalize over time and you'll feel a little bit better.
Yeah, but it will.
So, I feel the need, and I'm very conscious of time, it's 9:15. And so I just feel the need to close the loop on a conversation I asked 15 minutes ago, a question that I asked 15 minutes ago. And my question was, what would it take to get back to the good conversation that you've had? And we've heard from Hannah that to get back there, it would take these, how are you doing? And you fleshed that out a little bit, what that might look like and what that might work. I don't know if I heard an answer from you, Brent, to that question, and I just would like to close the loop, because I've heard from Hannah, for you, what would it take to go back to those good conversations you've had 5 years ago, or 4 years ago?
I think a lot of what we've talked about today is gonna help with that.
Okay.
That's my feeling. I honestly, I'm gonna have to think a little bit about what's happened here. Because I mean, we talked about a lot of stuff and there's a lot of stuff, and I think maybe you and I may need to have some conversations, if you're okay with that. So I don't have a ready answer for you on that one.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna have to,
So how?
I mean, but that's where I wanna go, for sure.
For sure. So Brent, you know, as we do have to wrap up given time-wise, I would just wonder then, once you've had a chance to think about that and bring that forward, what are you going to need from Hannah, or how are you going to bring that forward with Hannah? What's the plan?
Well, I was joking earlier, but I'd be content to have some chats in the morning before we get started on things.
Okay.
That's-
So it's some private, through the private conversation where you ask Hannah how's it going, you'll also be able to think about it going forward. Sound like
I think private sounds good.
Yeah, I would prefer it to be in Brent's office, and I am okay right now to do once a week, because it's more than we've been doing, and I think it would be a nice
So is this
process.
Is this something you'd like us to record to right now?
Sure.
So that you have that as an agreement?
Sure,
Or you-
it's what you do, I guess.
Or if you're just
Um,
comfortable having that between you, I mean, we like to capture it and give it back to you in an email, just to say, this is what we heard was agreed upon.
It
that-
goes to the
that
specifics.
Hannah would connect with Brent in his office. I heard you say once a
Once
week
Yeah.
or more
Yeah,
in a private conversation
yeah, I would not want it to be in the hall.
to just kind of check in.
Okay, now I do understand as well, we're coming up against a time barrier here. From my perspective, we really have only talked about one
Right, and
issue here, and the other one is a pretty central concern to me, to be honest.
the role and the performance, and we can get together again and look through that piece for sure.
It sounds like we do need to schedule a continuance to talk about roles and clarify those roles, appreciating how, that is another difficult conversation for you and for you, Francis.
I think this will help that, though.
Mm-hmm.
I know we haven't touched on it, but I just feel better. And I think that these meetings will actually help that.
Help
I'm
help
open.
the role of
Yeah,
the-
I'm open to having another conversation. It won't be an easy one for me, but I'm open to it. But I do think that this is maybe it's addressing both of those issues. For me personally, that's my perspective. But
Right. Well, how about if we touch base with you guys in a week and just see,
Sure.
we'd like to schedule another
Sure.
opportunity to get you
Brent,
together and
you're-
just see how things are going.
Brent, I just wondered how that sounds for you.
Sounds great. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
And so also before we wrap up, because we talked about confidentiality at the beginning, so I'm just wondering what it is now going forward that, we would like to share just that little piece that we captured with the VP, just to kind of keep him in the loop. I want to see if you guys are okay with that, and then what you want to share generally.
So what happens when he says so? What do they talk about?
Right, that we can then share that this is the outcome of.
And he says, okay, and what did they
I
talk
would
about?
answer, this is the process that we followed, right? We asked these questions, they answered these questions, we met for an hour,
He can
right?
be
So I can
quite-
go to the
He can be
process.
quite persistent and
Yes.
demanding, so on.
You know,
And
Brent, for me, I would answer those questions with the process piece and share that you have reached a plan, that you have a plan for moving forward, and that there is a follow-up plan,
And
and
certainly,
that you have expressed a commitment to those plans, both of them.
right, and certainly Bronte understands that the process is confidential. We've
Yes.
had that conversation with him, so I think,
Right,
the
absolutely.
expectation
We
there
set him up
is-
for that when we met with him.
Isn't that he's gonna get a whole lot of information, so.
I'm fine with this being shared. I mean, it gives him an
Right,
outcome.
that he's meeting, yeah.
Yeah, it gives him an outcome of the meeting.
I like to
Okay,
say
so we'll
this.
summarize this in an email,
Okay.
and we'll send it to you and to
First,
your.
for wording, and then,
Yeah.
when you're good with the wording, we'll forward that.
I'd like to personally say this is a lot less weird than I thought it was going to be.
Well, that's because we're not therapists, we're.
I'd say it was less weird than I
Before
thought.
Brent and Hannah, I would just like to acknowledge what you've done today, that you sat down at this table today and you prepared for a very difficult conversation. And you both agreed to gentle, honest, open, specific talk. You answered the question, what are you here to resolve today? And you identified role of communication. And you had a very frank conversation about communication in the workplace. And I just like to acknowledge that. It's not an easy conversation for anybody to do. Thank you.
Thanks for your